All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another round of coffee and questions. And what's today's topic? Well, out in the garage, in my work area anyway, I have a lot of hammers. Handheld sledgehammers I've bought out at Harbor Freight and various places. And I have ball peen hammers. I've got framing hammers. I've got metal bending hammers. I mean, I've got different hammers for different uses. And one way to keep them organized is to build yourself some kind of a rack for them. So in this video, I'm going to give you a slideshow, and I'm going to show you different ideas. They're not mine. And I'll tell you the one that I built as we go along. But these are ideas for you if you want to build something to organize your hammers. And I'm going to show you several different slides. I'll make some comments on them, and then we'll do a question and answer session here at the end. So, like I always say, let's just get right after it. No long intros. Let me start with the first slide, and then we'll go from there. Give me just a sec. Okay, let's talk briefly about this one. I mean, you can see where he took some pieces of pine, and he just cut some angles on them, and then he went ahead and affixed them to the wall. Now, on top there, you could use a piece of like aluminum kind of tubing or piping, drill a hole, down through the top with a drill press or a corded drill or whatever you have, and then he put screws down through the top of them into those grooves. They were like, a hole that he had drilled through there on the end where that pipe sits. Now, this is a fast, easy, thing that you can do, and you can just hang a series of hammers in there like that. I thought about doing it that way at first, and then I thought, well, I didn't have a whole lot of shop space to do it in. But it's a quick, easy way to do it. You could do it out of any kind of piping or steel that you have laying around. It doesn't have to be, this hollow aluminum tubing, but, any rectangular steel, you could use rod, whatever else that's nice and sturdy that'll hold the hammer weight. But that's a fast, easy way to do it. Okay, let's change to the next picture. Okay, now here's another one that he used steel, and he went ahead and bolted it onto the side of his bench. Now, he used some kind of rivets or screws or something like that to hold the rectangular tube pieces in, and you see how they go across to the other side of his bench, and he used angle iron here on the end like you see on my right. Now, you can do it that way. You can also use your MIG welder, oxyacetylene, arc, whatever you have, and you could weld it up the same way and then just bolt it, screw it into the end of your bench. Not a bad way. It might work for you. It wouldn't work for me. I have a welding table, and I didn't really want to put anything on there like that stuck out that far. But this isn't a bad idea either, and it gives you an idea. You can always modify it, to fit your needs. Okay, here's another one that I thought was fairly simple to use. Whether you have like, say, 1/2 inch, flat steel, or you've got something along those lines, you can turn around and you can make these bends like he did here on the end on the far upper left, and then he bolted it into like a wood workbench. But this would be really easy for you to make that bend if you got an anvil or anything laying around where you could heat this up. Or if you're using some kind of mild steel, you might not even need to heat it depending on the thickness. It doesn't need to be real thick to hold these hammers. But in this picture, it looks to me like you use something close to 1/8, which is, it's pretty thick. But you might get away with something a little bit thinner, and you can make that bend, bolt it right in, just drill a hole through the steel, use a lag bolt, bolt it in. Now, if I had a big wooden bench, and I do out in the garage, I thought about this, but I was going to make a much shorter one where I can just drop, my hammers like right into there when I'm done with the project on the end. And I still may end up doing that because it's a fast, easy, it's a good idea. It looks fairly clean. And I have on the end of my bench where I could do this. So this is a pretty good idea, I thought, compared to some of the others. And it makes it very versatile because you can actually put a whole row of a certain kind of hammer in there that you're using. Now, these are all metalworking, hammers, but it depends on your shop and your setup. But again, it's an easy way to do it. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Now, this one I thought is simple to make and it's clean. He took 2 long strips of wood. Now, you can use plywood. You could use 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch plywood. You could use, just pine board that you buy out at the big box stores. And you can buy them already, in, smaller widths. So you don't have to do a lot of cutting. And then you come home and you make 2 cuts and you make 2 of them. the same length. And then you can see here where he put one on the bottom and then he put this one on the top, and he made those little angle brackets over here on the far left. And then, you know, somebody said, well, what about the holes? Now, the holes you can do a few different ways. You could just use a handheld jigsaw, cut them out. You know, it's not a beauty contest. Just cut them out, make them look decent. Or you could use, if you have them, you have a hole drill saw, and then just turn around and, you know, use a drill press. You could use a hand drill, quarter drill, whatever, and go along, you know, make your markings, you know, use a tape measure, figure out your spacing, and go ahead and drill out the holes all the way along. And then you can use that handheld jigsaw and just make the, you know, the long cuts coming in, and there you go, you've got it. Then you can sand it, clean it up, do what you want. You could put a finish on it if you want to play around and have some fun. Boiled linseed oil, that's always an easy, quick, down dirty way, I mean, to put some kind of a sealing coat on this. I'd say put a couple of coats, put one on, let it sit for 24 hours or better, you know, put another coat on. But each coat, let it sit on there. I usually let it sit on 45, 50 minutes and I hand rub it off. Then I let it set up 24, 48 hours. I do it one more time, I hand rub it off, and then I let it just sit there, because it's a utility thing. You know, you're not going after a fine finish work, but it does give it a protective coating. Okay, let's move on. Okay, now this is something similar, I mean, to what I made. I've got a welding table. You'll see in some of my videos, that's where I talk from when I do the videos. I use these pieces of pipe, you know, and I cut them about sometimes a half an inch or a 3/4, a whole bunch of them. And I actually tack weld them, I mean, to the sides, you know, of my welding table. Well, the reason why I said tack weld is, well, if I'm not happy with where they are, you know, I can just go ahead, you know, and with an angle grinder and a cutoff wheel, I can take that tack weld off, you know, and I can put it somewhere else. So I have them like on the back side of my welding table that you see, like I said, in the videos. And I've got different sizes. I mean, some of them I have metal files that when I'm done filing, to keep everything organized, I just drop my metal files back into, you know, these round pieces of cut off pipe. Get them big enough, you can use them like he did here in the picture for hammers. I've got a couple of them that are big on mine, because I've usually got about 3 to 4 hammers that I will use in and around metalworking when I'm metalworking. Now that's metalworking. If you want to create one big long rack on your wall to put all of your hammers in, I mean, your non-resilient hammers, your metalworking hammers, your woodworking hammers, you know, you can make a much longer rack and put them all together. So I said we would discuss the way that I did it. You know, it's like I said, mine's a little segregated. I mean, I've got a series of them on my welding table just to drop, you know, my metalworking hammers, but you can do it any way you want. In this picture, he welded it to a piece of angle iron. He drilled some holes through it, and then he just used screws and he screwed it into the back of his workbench. You can do it that way too. And you can create, like I said, a big long row of them depending on how many hammers you have. Okay, here's another way. I mean, he's just using, this is plywood, probably 3/4 shop grade, something like that. And I mean, you can just take a look at this picture, get your own idea if you want to make something like this. And you can see where he made the 45-degree cuts. He cut off the fronts of them, you know, gave a little bit of character on those end pieces. And then he made one flat one across the top, and he used one for the backing. You can see below and behind those hammers. Up top, he used a hole saw. That's all he used. And he used a different size hole saw, spaced them out, went along, drilled a series of holes, and just dropped his hammers through it. Okay, in this one, I put up 2 different pictures. Let's start with the one that's right here, you know, by my head. Now, you can use PVC if you want to. Not my choice, but I mean, if that's what you wanted to do, you could. You can see in the back row there where he cut it up at an angle, and then he just drilled a hole and is able to kind of just screw it into that plywood in the back. And he's using it, I mean, to drop pliers and things like that, and you can do it that way. Purpose of the video is for hammers. If you buy big enough round PVC, you can do that too, but I would encourage you to try to put 2 screws in it, maybe one at the top and one towards the bottom going into whatever you're securing it on, because some of these hammers are quite heavy. So that is an idea. I suppose you could do it out of PVC. Somebody made the comment, they made a whole, like, you know, series of these like in a rack, and I thought, okay, that's a good idea. I'm going to include it in the video. Not really the way that I would have done it, but yes, you can do it that way. The one over on the right, this is more of a French cleat system. you can do a search on French cleat and they'll explain to you, I mean, how you can create these. They're just movable shelves and movable tool hangers. That's what it means in really the French cleat. But if you take a look down on the bottom right over here, you'll see where he made a very simple French cleat shelf or holder, and he drops all of his hammers in there in one big long row. You can do it that way too. Okay, now this is a variation of something we saw earlier. You can make a much bigger one if you have that many hammers. I don't. But, you know, here what he did is he made a big one. I mean, with rows of hammers. I mean, he's got, I don't know if he collects them or what, but the idea here is the way that, I mean, he cut the slots in these and the way that he's hanging them. So he has a place where the head of the hammer is and down towards where the bottom of the handle is. Just another variation. Let's move on. Okay, nothing's complete without using an old pallet, right? So, I mean, here he's got a pallet that he used. I mean, you can modify the pallet. You don't have to use the whole pallet. I mean, you could actually, if the spacing, that in-between spacing is there for you to drop hammers in, if you come across an old pallet, just cut it, you know, make it as long or, you know, in length as you want. And you can toy around just using pallet wood and make something look really rustic. Use a DA sander or something like that, or random orbital, sand it up, throw a finish of some kind on there, make it look old, distressed, you know. It's an idea. I wouldn't use the whole pallet or whatever like he was doing here in the picture. You know, I might come down, you know, 2 of those boards from the top and cut it, and then, you know, figure out a place to hang it, and you could create a bottom shelf for it. You could create a top shelf for it behind it. You could do lots of different things with this if you come across an old pallet and you don't feel like buying the wood. Okay, not the best quality picture, but it gives you an idea if you just want to use dowels and you have a place. You can space dowels like he did here, and you can hang axes. You can hang hammers for it, you know, whatever you want. This is not something that would work in my garage, but you might have a much larger home garage and you might want to do your own backing of, you know, plywood, whatever you want. But you can use big sturdy dowels and come out of ways and create your own doing it this way too. Okay, this is the last one. So, I mean, let's go ahead and talk about this for a minute. He used plywood, obviously. He probably used a hole saw and he spaced and drilled the holes on the top. Then he used a jigsaw to come in and join where that hole is. And then he probably had some kind of drum sanding disc or drum sanding tool, and he was able to sand these up because they look pretty clean. Now, you don't have to go to that, you know, that extreme if you don't want to, but you would want to clean them up, I mean, the best you can. But you can see where he has sanded this down, I mean, all of the edges and everything else, and really cleaned this up. But this was a simple idea. I mean, if you take a look at this, he has a backing on there. And then he has that shelf front where you would slide the hammers in. And then he created his own brackets here on the end. And they don't have to be fancy. You could sketch one out on paper, and then you just duplicate it by cutting 2 at the same time, sand them up, and you have your brackets, okay? And then you can go ahead and screw them in from the back, you know, from the back forward into the bracket, and from the top down into the bracket. And then you have that whole back piece where you can set this up on a wall anywhere you want and secure it to the wall. And now you can come along and hang your hammers in there. Now, you can make this as long as you want to. You can make it a little bit wider if you have the room. And then besides setting your hammers in there, you know, you'll have some shelf space to put other things, whether it's a charger, you know, whatever you want to do. You can modify these all the way you want. This whole slideshow is just meant to give you ideas. If it's something you're interested in doing or you wanted to do out in your garage, find one of these slides that works for you, sketch it out on paper, modify the dimensions, play around with it. I mean, the idea is go out, have some fun, and then you can actually make this to your own specifications instead of something store-bought. You have an area where you want to make it a little bit longer and have it fit in there exact. There you go. These will give you some ideas, and all you got to do is measure it up, lay it out. Go ahead and do it and have some fun. Let's switch over to questions and answers. What would I suggest in the way of materials? It depends on if you're going to make something for your welding table or something for woodworking. Let's talk about woodworking. I would use plywood or some of the inexpensive pine board from out at Home Depot or Lowe's. A lot of times I can get it in the width that I want, which, you know, cuts down on all my cutting time and whatever else, and it'll work. If not, I mean, I have a table saw. I can take it to width, you know, fast enough. But to answer your question, I would turn around, take a look while I was out there for any cutoffs or smaller sections or things that are on sale. Make it out of the plywood, make it out of, you can make it out of particle board, I suppose, but I would use plywood or that pine wood. Now on metal, I go to a metal supplier, and the first thing that I always do is I ask them, hey, where's your cutoffs? Then I go look through the cutoffs. Now they usually charge by foot or what have you on a lot of this steel, and sometimes they're still going to charge you their price per foot. But the one that I go out there often enough now where they give me a price break on everything, because I'm like a regular customer and they think, well, he's pretty cool. So, we'll go ahead, we'll give him these pieces or we'll give him a discount or whatever. And so I always look through their scrap pile. Well, I shouldn't say scrap, it's cutoff. And they stack them up. You're going to find tubular steel, round steel, cold rolled, hot rolled, plate steel, all kinds of different things. So sometimes I pick up extra pieces for other projects and I get them cheap enough. So that's my advice on that. You could take a look at the big box stores, for the iron piping and see if the diameter of them is large enough for you to drop hammer handles through. You could do that too. What do I put on it for a finish? Well, I joke around. I say it's not a beauty contest. As long as it's functional, who cares? I don't care about sanding and cleaning up the cuts and all that stuff like you did in the picture, but I want it to look decent. But this isn't a finishing video, but for the most part on all my stuff out there, boiled linseed oil is cheap. Put it on, let it dry for a while, hand scrub it off, let it set up. Johnson's paste wax, another one. Those are the two because they're inexpensive and they work real good. So those are like my two go-tos. I mean, for, putting anything on these projects when I'm done, including the metal, because Johnson's paste wax on a lot of stuff will prevent the rusting if you're not going to paint them. But yeah, you can make these as complex as you want. Look, I kept this whole slideshow basic for a reason. A hole saw, a jigsaw, some sanding paper. You got this, okay? And a drill of some kind, because you're going to want to drill holes. You're going to want to screw it together. You can use wood glue, okay? But I try to use drywall screws are brittle, but if you're careful and, you drill without a lot of force, you won't snap them. So I like to screw a lot of things together. It's just a better way of securing, I think. But you can use glue, Gorilla Glue, any of the tight bond, wood welding glue, epoxy, whatever you want. Sure, you could use any of that stuff. It would work. My other comment is these aren't real hard projects. You should get your kids involved in this stuff. They would have a lot of fun. Just keep an eye on them because some of the tools can, be dangerous. But this particular project, the tools won't be that dangerous with a hole saw, jigsaw, and like a cordless drill or any kind of a drill that you have. And the other thing is I have a female friend and she likes working with steel. And so this thing about, well, this is like an all guy thing. No, it's not really. She loves doing this stuff. She does a very good job when she's over helping, and she creates a lot of her own stuff and takes it home with her. So yeah, you can get friends involved as well as kids. Sure. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I hope this answered a lot of questions that people had on making your own tool holders. If you don't want to use it for hammers, make the hole sizes different. You can use them for drills, pliers, whatever you want. Slideshow's meant to give you ideas, okay? I hope you hit the notification bell, click subscribe, and I'm going to see you on the next video. And if there's something in here I didn't cover, ask me a question in the comment or leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I would appreciate it. I'll see you on the next video. You folks have a great day. Bye-bye.